We've all been there. You're on a date, it's going really well. You've ordered drinks, you're talking about your favourite Sonic the Hedgehog game, and then your date looks lovingly into your eyes and says, "So, what's your favourite large language model?" Welcome to Foxy's Lab. I'm Foxy, and fear not, I have the answer to the greatest question in the modern dating scene. What the heck is an LLM? Go grab a coffee, I'll get one too, and then we'll get into it. Large language models, more commonly known as an LLM, or even just generally as AI these days, is basically a type of artificial intelligence that's trained to understand and generate human-like text. If you've ever used ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or any AI that can write essays, code, or poems, or if you've seen a video of a cat working in a McDonald's, then congratulations, you've already met an LLM, or at least seen its work. But under the hood, it's not magic, it's maths. Very fancy maths, but maths nonetheless. Millions, or these days billions, of little numerical weights called parameters are trained to predict the next word in a sentence. That's it. Every time you type, it's just guessing what comes next, over and over again, albeit very, very fast. Imagine a predicted text system if it had had 200 cups of coffee. Ooh, speaking of which. Alright, quick history lesson. I promise this won't feel like school. Technically, AI started the first time a machine made a calculation without the direct aid of a human. So that would be way back in the 1820s with Charles Babbage's difference engine. But we're not going to give LLMs the David Copperfield treatment today.
Shall we begin like David Copperfield? I am born, I grew up.
So let's just skip all that part and jump right to the first large language model. That journey starts back in the early 2000s with simple models that could only predict short word sequences. Then along came Transformers in 2017. No, not that Transformers. Transformers were described in a groundbreaking paper from Google called Attention is All You Need. Link in the description if you're interested. That paper changed the game entirely.
Game over, man! It's game over!
Instead of reading text in order, Transformers could look up all the words at once, spotting relationships and patterns across the entire context window. That allowed models to understand things like sarcasm, tone, and context far better, although still not perfectly.
Just when I think I've gotten the hang of sarcasm.
Then came the rapid expansion era. 1 year later, OpenAI dropped GPT-1, then GPT-2 a year after that, then GPT-3, and then suddenly the world went from AI can barely spell to AI can write your dissertation or your code or your resignation letter in one go. AI is all about language, so let's talk about the language that it uses by breaking down some of the more common technical jargon. A model is the M part of the LLM. All models are kind of like different people, each with their own specialities and quirks. ChatGPT 4.0 and 5, for example, have different behaviours because they've both experienced different training data. 4.0 is the quirky teenager to 5's young adult who's discovered art house cinema and boundaries. Personally, I'm looking forward to ChatGPT 6, which I hope will have matured into a grumpy middle-aged dork by then, as then I'll finally find it relatable. At its core, the model is the LLM, and the LLM is the model. If you change the model, you're now talking to a different personality.
Not a person.
Which is why you can find models which are specialised in specific areas. Those models have been specially trained on that domain's data to turn them into experts. Or at least, experts who lie all the time. So politicians, it turns them into politicians. A prompt is a word you've likely heard already. It's basically the input that you give to the model. Think of it like talking to a genie, except the genie is powered by maths, never grants wishes exactly how you intended, and frequently lies to your face while telling you everything you say is amazing. Just like a genie, it can interpret prompts in unpredictable ways, so to avoid your wish turning into a nightmare, it's important to make the prompt as specific and detailed as possible. I'll talk about how to write a good prompt later on in the video. Parameters are the model's internal knobs and dials, the things it adjusts during training. There's a lot of controversy at the moment as the parameters in all of the LLMs out there have their make their user happy dial turned up to 11. It would rather give you a complete answer by lying to you than potentially disappoint you by saying, I don't know.
Nobody tells me nothing.
Tokens are just chunks of text. Not quite words, not quite letters. YouTube is 1 token, Foxy's Lab is 4, or 3, take out the apostrophe. I've put a link to a token calculator in the description if you want to have a play around with it. Tokens get talked about a lot as if they're an AI invention, but they've actually been around for decades, and they're a very important part of modern programming. In fact, HTML, the cornerstone of the internet, could not exist without tokens. If you're interested in learning more about HTML and the web works, drop a comment in the video below. A context window is how much the model can remember from your conversation. The larger the context window, the more it can remember. Some models now have context windows that can contain an entire book's worth of text, and it's growing all of the time. This is one of the reasons that cloud-based AIs are getting to be so smart, and why local ones are still struggling to catch up. The bigger the context window, the more memory is needed to run it. Training data is exactly what it sounds like. It's the data the AI was trained on. The data is basically the entire public internet for most models, including a lot of copyrighted content, which has caused a lot of controversy about intellectual property theft and the ethics of using AI in general. I use LLMs practically every day. My day job is a software engineer. I use Claude Code to help me speed up my workflow. I tend not to let it do the actual thinking for me, but if I know how to do something already, it's a lot easier to just get Claude to do it for me. I also used it to write the first draft of the script for this very video. I gave it a basic prompt on what the video was about, and then a detailed list of things I wanted to include in the video, along with a bullet-pointed list of how I wanted it to be structured. The first output is almost always awful, but it does improve a bit with iteration, and it's a fantastic jumping-off point for my subsequent drafts. They're incredible for brainstorming ideas, explaining complex technology in simple ways, or debugging code when my brain has checked out for the night. I also use them in combination with other tools, like N8N, for example, to automate repetitive stuff. And I actually plan to connect my smart home to a local LLM at some point. I'll probably do a video about that, and we'll also likely make an N8N What the Heck video too, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. If used correctly, they're like a second brain or a digital butler. If used poorly, they're a menace and will likely cause more problems than they solve. And that leads us quite nicely to... yes, the gotchas. There are a lot of gotchas. LLMs are not infallible. In fact, they are very fallible. They don't know things, they don't think, they calculate. Despite how conscious they may appear to be when you talk to them, there's nothing behind the words they produce. No brain, no soul, no real intelligence, artificial or otherwise. That's why you get hallucinations. Confidently stated nonsense that sounds plausible but just isn't true. Due to their parameter weights, they'd rather give you a pleasing lie than a disappointing truth. They also inherit the biases in their training data, meaning they can unintentionally reflect stereotypes or misinformation. Elon Musk's grok is a prime example of this. It's clearly weighted to prefer his point of view on topics. And then there's privacy. Once you paste data into a cloud-hosted model, it might be stored or used for retraining. Sometimes you get the option to opt out of this, but it still can't be 100% trusted, so never share anything confidential unless you're using a private, locally hosted model. And of course, there's the part that nobody likes to talk about, the cost. Running a big LLM takes huge compute power. We're talking entire data centers full of expensive GPUs that sound like a jet engine and cost more than a small country's GDP to run. There have literally been talks about bringing decommissioned nuclear power stations back online, specifically to run AI models. They also require a ton of water to keep cool. In fact, your AI boyfriend and girlfriend may actually be drinking more water than you are. You should drink more water. Go get a glass now. I'll wait. This is a major problem in the AI space right now, as not only is it a big drain on the planet's resources, but it's also proving to be a big challenge to keep cloud AI profitable. Time will tell if they find a way to fix that, or if publicly available cloud AI will just be a short-lived fad. Lastly, and I think this is the biggest gotcha of them all, LLMs are kind of killing the internet. I'm not going to go into a deep dive here, as there's an excellent video by Kurzgesagt, I think I've pronounced that wrong, on that very topic, so I'll link to that in the description and you can watch it later if you like. Finish this video first though. So here's how to get the most out of your LLM. Rule 1, be specific. The clearer your prompt, the better your answer. Let's go back to the genie analogy. If I wish to be the sexiest man on earth, I know, what a redundant wish, right? Then the genie could fulfill that by transporting all of the other men on earth to the moon. Job done. Make your prompts as specific as you can. Cover every possible vague area up with detail. If you're using it to write, do what I do, and either write a skeleton draft or give it a set of bullet points and guidelines to work with. If you're using it to code, write what you want to accomplish. If it makes a mistake, guide it on how to go about debugging and fixing the mistake. Please fix is not going to yield the results you are hoping for. Always verify anything it says and assume that it's lying.
I don't believe you.
Treat its answers as a first draft, not gospel. As I mentioned before, it lies all the damn time and you simply cannot trust anything that it says. Fact check everything and make sure you use resources that you are sure have not also been written by an AI. Rule 3, iterate. Think of it as a conversation, not as a vending machine. Refine your request until it nails it. Even with a good prompt, it probably, in fact, it won't get it right the first time, but you can probably get a lot closer to what you want by chatting to it some more. Rule 4, protect your data. Use local or private models for sensitive stuff. Even private cloud-based models are only as trustworthy as the company that owns the model, so frankly, I don't think I'd even trust that. If you have a moderately powered computer, you can run a model locally. It won't be as fast or as capable as the cloud-based ones, but that model is entirely yours, and it's safe to share whatever you like with it. Rule 5, if you don't know how to do it yourself, don't use AI to do it. Because you can't trust the output of an LLM, it's vital that you know at least most of what you're talking about before you bring an AI in to help you. When researching a topic, you need to have a decent understanding of it already, or at least be good at researching it yourself so you can spot when it makes mistakes. When coding, it's important that you already know how to create clean and functional code. Otherwise, it's very likely that AI will produce something that sort of works but is an unmaintainable, or even worse, a dangerously insecure mess.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Always remember, the AI is your assistant. You are not its assistant. You should be the one that is in control. So there you go. Large language models. Not as scary as they sound, but still pretty damn scary on an existential level. But definitely one of the most important inventions of our lifetime. So if your next date does bring up LLMs, you can respond with some human intelligence of your very own. I'm new to YouTube, but I'll be producing a lot of videos like this going forward. So if you liked what you saw today, please hit the bell, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and tell your friends and your potential dates about me. That concludes my dating advice for the day. I will see you in the next one. Ta-ra!